Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. I'm Spencer Simpson.
And I'm Keltson Howell. We are coming up on a year of the Commander Pod, which I cannot believe. And we thought it would be good this week to do a wrap up of the first year of the Commander Pod and some of the things from 2024.
Yeah, kind of a belated 2024 wrap up, but also the quote unquote fiscal year of
the Commander Pod.
The Commander Pod, right?
We're February to February.
Exactly. We're offset from your typical year. But I think it's been an awesome year. We're so stoked with where the channel has gone and where the channel has reached so far. We started doing this just because we were talking about Magic together and thought we had some fun ideas that we wanted to share with people.
And why not just hit record while we're chatting?
Exactly. Yeah. We were just sitting on the phone doing nothing anyways. So we're so stoked. It has exceeded our expectations like tenfold probably for me. I can't believe
definitely.
how many of you are watching and commenting and interacting, how many people we've had in our Discord. It's just been so fun. So thank you everybody for joining us for the past year, and we hope you guys stick around as we go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in addition to wrapping up the last year, we're also going to share some of our expectations and our goals for 2025 as well. But first, let's just jump into 2024. We're going to start with our favorite cards. So, Spencer, do you want to tell me your 5 favorite cards from 2024? Well, from the last year.
Yeah. Okay. So, should we just do my 5 and then your 5?
Yeah.
Or you want to switch back and forth? Okay. All right. My favorite cards of 2024. I will preface this by saying, as I was doing this, I realize that this is relatively front-loaded in terms of cards released over the course of 2024. Like, I don't have any Bloomborough, and I don't really have... I have one Bloomborough, but I had to consciously dig through Duskmourn and Bloomborough cards, and I realized I should be playing more of them, because there's a lot of sick cards.
Oh my gosh, there are. There are some very good ones.
Actually, one of the coolest things I thought from Duskmourn, too, that I noticed when I was looking through the cards, were the cards that had multiple printings within the same treatment, but they had one that had like a little ghoul in it and one that didn't. One of Valgavoth's minions in it, which was so cool. I thought that was really sweet.
That was really fun.
We'll have to show some of those, I think, when we talk about it right now. Okay, so my first favorite card from 2024 is Chthonian Nightmare. Surprising no one. I think this card is so sick. So I'll read Chthonian Nightmare really quick. It is 1 and a black for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy. And you can pay X energy and sacrifice a creature and return Chthonian Nightmare to your hand to return target creature card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. But you can only activate it as a sorcery.
So for people who have not played this card yet, what are the kinds of creatures that you're wanting to sacrifice, and what are the creatures that you're wanting to get back that make this like a good investment or like a powerful synergy?
Sure. So this is like the ultimate, in my opinion, Rakdos Aristocrats card. Like I built a jury Master of the Review deck. I love Aristocrats. I think it's such a fun strategy. And Aristocrats, generally speaking, is a lot of small creatures that have either ETBs or LTBs that you're trying to generate value across, right? And so Chthonian Nightmare enables that very effectively because you can take one of your creatures that has a good LTB and you can sacrifice it to Chthonian Nightmare, get your creature with a good ETB back, and have them swap places. And you can also save up energy, right? So if I sacrifice a creature, if I'm getting back a creature that's worth 1 mana, then I'm netting 2 additional mana for the next time, so I can get a 5 mana creature back or something.
Cool.
And if, for those who haven't played against Recurring Nightmare, Chthonian Nightmare is also relatively difficult to interact with because the play pattern would be playing it and then not waiting a turn cycle or anything like that. So if everyone's tapped out, they don't have a way to interact with it on your turn. It's only as a sorcery, so it's not as backbreaking or crippling as Chthonian or as Recurring Nightmare.
Sure. You can't do it in response to interaction.
Right, but you can keep doing it, which I think is sick. Where Victimize, which I think is probably one of the best, sacrifice a small thing, get back big things, payoff.
Sure.
I like that Chthonian Nightmare is recurable also, that you can continue Chthonian Nightmaring to try to get stuff. I think the biggest pairing with this that I really like, especially in these Aristocrats decks, is a Curse Marauder, which was also from
Oh,
Modern Horizons
yeah,
3.
that's really good together, isn't it?
Yeah, so a Curse Marauder is 1 and a black for a 2/1 zombie warrior, and when it enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a non-token creature. So you're gonna net negative on creatures, but if you have something that like creates tokens or creates creatures when another creature
Yeah.
dies or something like that, then
Which you probably want in a Rakdos Aristocrats deck anyway.
100%. Yeah.
Very cool.
Alrighty, card number 2 for me is Final Showdown from Murders at Karlov Manor. I always want to say Markov Manor, and so whenever I say Karlov Manor,
You got it this time.
I got it this time. Yep, I got it correct. So Final Showdown is a good showcase of the spree mechanic from this set, which I also thought was very cool. I'm pretty in on additional costs these days, especially for like flexible cards. Like I think Kicker's actually kind of sick. I know everything's kind of Kicker. And Kicker's generally more weak in Commander, I think, unless it's like a really busted Kicker effect. But I think it's cool to be able to like have the flexibility to do either of those. So Final Showdown is 1 white for an instant, but it has spree, so you have to choose one of these additional costs. And the first one is 1 generic, all creatures lose all abilities till end of turn. The next one is 1 generic, choose a creature you control, it gains indestructible till end of turn. And the next one is 3 generic and 2 white, destroy all creatures. So if you're paying for all of these costs, it is 3 white, 5 generic, right? And all creatures lose all abilities. One of your creatures gains indestructible, and you destroy all creatures. This card is so sick because it's an instant. I think it's like an instant speed board wipe. This is it's kind of like a baby Cycrift, right? In white,
yeah.
more expensive, and only saves one of your creatures, and doesn't hit non-land.
But the flexibility is that you can use this as a dress down on an opponent's turn to like really mess up their turn.
Yeah, to stop them from like comboing off or whatever. I actually had this win me a game. Help me not lose a game, which translated to me winning a game because someone board wiped. I was at a very low life total, and one of my other opponents was playing a zombie deck and had out some of the zombie pingers or the zombie drain creatures. When other zombies die or other creatures die, it starts to ping you, and I knew I was going to be the target for those. And so, in response to the board wipe, I just for 1 and a white cast Final Showdown, and all creatures lose all abilities till end of turn. So none of them had any triggered abilities on the death triggers, and it saved me. And I think it's just such a sick, flexible card. I don't know that it's underplayed. I've not really seen anyone play it, though we only are in our play group.
But this is one of the better cards from OTJ, right?
I think so. I think it's one of the better cards from the set. You said,
yeah.
Yeah.
At least for Commander. Also, did we say that this was from Murders at Karlov Manor?
Oh yes, sorry. This is from this is from OTJ. This is Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Sorry. These are all pretty front loaded on Outlaws and Karlov Manor, and I confused them.
No, so I think that this is really, really good. I'm looking through like some of the other OTJ cards that are high on EDA track, like obviously Terror of the Peaks, but that was a reprint. That's not like a new card, right? And Insatiable Avarice, which is a tutor. But like what's cool about this card is like it takes the spot in your deck of a staple, a board wipe, but gives you additional ways to use it when you don't need a board wipe, which is to save one of your creatures or to, dress down your opponent's creatures. So
100%.
Yeah, it's super flexible, which makes it really powerful.
I think it's so sick, and I think the art on it might be my favorite art from the set.
I was gonna say that.
Oh, I was gonna say, so
and not
dope.
To mention, you get to play with a card that has crazy cool art.
Yeah, I think it might be my favorite art from the set, partially because a lot of the art, honestly, from this set was like very cartoony.
It felt a little campy.
Yeah, a little Fortnite-esque a little bit, which wasn't for me as much. But I thought this one was very cool.
I want to know the story of this character that has like these cool tendrils coming down.
I know.
Like, yeah, it's sweet.
It's so sick. Now, that's not to say all the art was, I should say. Like, Rakdos the Muscle, freaking sick. Like, the art on Rakdos is so cool. I think there's a lot of really cool art from the set, but this, I think, was one of my favorites.
I do every time. I know that there's another card from OTJ called High Noon. But every time I see this card, I just hear it's High Noon from Overwatch.
Oh, it's High
in my head. Yep. That's all I hear when I see this card.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I did call it High Noon for a little while, just because they're both white cards.
Yeah, they have very similar feels to them.
Yeah, very similar vibes. Cowboy vibes, like the whole
Cowboy
set.
vibes. Yeah. Yep.
Okay,
Exactly.
my next favorite card, also from not Murders at Carlisle Manor, from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, is Gisa the Hellraiser.
Oh yeah.
Gisa is so sick. Can you read Gisa? I feel like
Yeah, I'd
I'm
love to.
talking so much.
Yeah, Gisa the Hellraiser is 3 black for a 4/4 legendary creature human warlock at Mythic. It has Ward 2, pay 2 life. That is a
Sick.
good ward cost. That's
Yeah.
really good. Skeletons and zombies you control get +1/+1 and have menace. So finally, the skeleton lord that we've been looking for. And whenever you commit a crime, create 2 tapped 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature tokens. This ability triggers only once each turn. Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty sweet. It turns
It's-
all of your interaction into tutus.
Into zombies. So
Yeah.
sick. Okay, so
Well,
there
into
are prob-
3/3s. 3/3s with
into
menace.
3/3s with menace.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Pretty good.
I think Gisa is very good. I have only played Gisa in one context. I guess technically 2 contexts. But my favorite, when Gisa became my favorite was when I was playing Chromatic Cube, I think it was, or Arena Cube, like one of the
Yeah.
vintage cubes or whatever. Gisa was in the set, and I built a Rakdos Aristocrats deck, and I had Yawgmoth. I had all of the sick Aristocrat staples, but I ended up having Gisa and Goblin Bombardment on the battlefield at the same time. And Goblin Bombardment is 1 in a red for an enchantment. Sack a creature, deals 1 damage to any target. And so what you could do is on each turn, so my turn, opponent's turn, my turn, opponent's turn, you sack a zombie and deal 1 damage to either the opponent's face or one of their creatures or whatever. And you create 2
Create a
more
new
zombies.
zombie.
And so you're
Yeah.
netting a new zombie.
Oh, you get
each-
2 zombies.
Yeah.
Oh my
so,
gosh.
So you're netting 1
Oh,
zombie each
man.
time. So not only are you dealing damage to their face, your zombie army of 3/3s with menace is just growing. And
That's
it's,
so cool.
And her ward too is like so backbreaking that
Yeah. This has got to be a really fun commander deck to play, right?
it's I've never played it in black. I got really attached to the Rakdos version of this. But I imagine mono black is like pretty solid because there's lots
Very
of
fun.
like discard stuff even. Like you could the
Yeah.
new what's it called? The new enchantment, the Tiny Bones joins up. Like the joins up cards.
Yeah.
That one you target any number of target players, discard a card, which is a crime, and so you can kind of start.
That's cool.
I think it's sick.
That's very cool. I like
All
this
right,
one too.
let's blaze on to the next one. This one I had a hard time. Originally, I had 2 from Karlov Manor. I snuck in a third with Final Showdown, even though it's Outlaws of Thunder Junction. But this is the one I think that was just my overall favorite. It is Izoni Center of the Web. So Izoni Center of the Web is 4 black green for a legendary creature, Elf Detective, 5/4. Oh, yo, she's an elf. That's
Yeah.
so sick.
Yeah.
I never realized that.
I know it's because she has spider legs coming off the back of her.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't feel
I
very elfy.
I didn't expect her to be an elf. Maybe she
Yeah.
goes in a elf
Marin?
A Marin deck or no? Lathril, a Lathril deck.
Oh, that's what I meant. Yeah, Lathril.
Because okay. We'll talk about why this would be sick in Lathril and why I should be playing her in Lathril. So Izoni has Menace. She's a 5/4, and when she enters the battlefield or attacks, so she has Titan text.
That's
which is freaking
crazy.
sick.
I didn't realize it was Titan text.
Yeah, freaking sick.
Yeah.
You can collect evidence 4, which is exile any number of cards with total mana value 4 or greater from your graveyard. If you do, you create 2/2/1 black and green spider tokens with menace and reach, and then you can sacrifice 4 tokens to surveil 2, draw 2 cards, and gain 2 life.
Holy cow.
So
That's so much.
it's so much. So the first
Yeah.
place I played this, and I think my favorite deck for it currently, which you haven't talked about on the show. You talked to me the other day about you were taking apart some commander decks, and I've
Yeah.
thought about taking apart or repurposing this one. Is my Sidisi Brood Tyrant deck? It's a
Yeah.
Sidisi Brood Tyrant and Umori the Collector companion deck. So it only runs creatures, but Sidisi's sick because you run enough creatures and you start to create zombie tokens, and so when Izoni enters, you've hopefully milled enough cards that you can collect evidence pretty easily. and now you have zombie tokens and spider
You can
tokens to sacrifice to surveil,
Cool.
to put more stuff in your graveyard, to get more tokens from Sidisi and draw
I remember
cards.
this card, I've seen it go off in that deck, and it's like really cool how it starts to loop like that.
It's kind of sick. Yeah, and it doesn't like quite loop because you're only getting like one zombie per time a creature goes into your graveyard.
Sure.
But I think it's still pretty sick. Dude, I forgot that it's attacks as well. That is so
cool.
sick. That's so
really
cool.
6 mana is a lot.
It is.
But you get a lot of value usually immediately when you play it, right?
Yeah, I would guess so. All it takes is you having 2 tokens out, and it's basically 6 mana, collect
6 mana
evidence 4, draw 2, or surveil 2, draw 2, gain 2 for a 5/4.
For 9/6 stats worth of menace.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
But then if you happen to have 2 tokens out already, which don't even have to be creature tokens, by the way. Like you could have clues or foods or whatever.
Man.
And you have 2 additional tokens plus your spiders. It's 6 mana for a 5/4. Surveil 2, draw 2, gain 2. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I think it's a sick card. It's one of my favorites. This I was pretty closely tied between this one and evidence. No, I can't remember the name of it. It's
the Sphinx.
The Sphinx. Yeah, the Sphinx I think is also sick. Because I love the graveyard stuff. Okay, my last one here is one of my favorite cards from the year. I did feel a little bit obliged to
put a Bloomborough card
to
in.
put a Bloomborough or a Duskmourn card in. So this one is, but it is a sick card. I think one of my favorite cards of the year. After looking through your list, I'm a little jealous of some of your picks because those are also contenders for some of my favorite cards of the year.
Nice.
This one is Glarb Calamity's Augur. It is Sultai mana for a legendary creature, Frog Wizard Noble, 2/4 with Death Touch. You can look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play lands, woof, I forget about that one all the time, and cast spells with mana value 4 or greater from the top of your library, and you can tap Glarb to surveil 2.
And this card is especially cool because Spencer has been helping me build a CEDH deck around Glarb because I think it's a really cool CEDH commander.
It's so sick. I've played against it several times now, and I play Tassiger's my CDH deck currently, which is another Sultai shell that has a little bit of a different strategy. And I really like Tassiger, and in fact, by the time this airs, I will have brought Tassiger to a tournament to try to see how I could do with the deck. We'll see how that goes.
For Spencer. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone retroactively wish me luck. But I think Glarb is probably I think Glarb is a real deck. I think Glarb is a contender for one of the better decks in the format in exclusively Sultai colors.
Yeah.
And but I also think that the ability is just so cool. And not only is it cool, just like baseline cool for like if you're just playing the deck casually, it's especially cool to see all of the like broken and disgusting stuff it can do in CEDH because of all of the abilities.
One of my favorite combo pieces in high power decks is like Doomsday. And Doomsday is not good as a combo, but Glarb makes Doomsday very good and viable as an actual like game ending combo, which is why I was interested in this deck to begin with and why Spencer's helping me. So
yeah, it's because you can cast typically Gush is one of the things that helps you crack. They call it cracking a Doomsday pile, and Glarb lets you cast it from the top, which is so sick, and or surveil stuff into your graveyard to be able to try to do Thassa's Oracle shenanigans. I think one of my favorite Glarb, not Glarbisms, Glarb interactions is Glarbisms is with Necropotence. Where you can, each time you're going to exile a card to Necropotence, you can look at the top card of your library first.
And to know if you want to exile it.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can know, you don't have to like guess, like, well, I guess, and typically the pattern is you like pay as much life as you can reasonably to get as many cards as you need to. But with Glarb, you can kind of be like, I'll stop here. It looks like I have enough, which I think is, is super cool. I think he's just a cool dude. Look at him lounging on his throne.
Super cool. Yeah. Yeah, Frogger.
Okay, can you tell me about yours? Because I think some of yours are sick.
Yeah, so I kind of picked, my first two are ones that I do think are cool, but I think they're good for the format, and I'm excited to talk about them. And then the other three are just three that like have become pet cards of mine that I'm very excited about.
Very cool.
So the first one is going to be actually a cycle, the Surveil lands. I think on a lot of other podcasts, when they've talked about their favorite cards from last year, this is almost always on the list, the Surveil lands. What makes me so excited is that there's still more design space to explore for dual lands and good dual lands. So, for example, Undercity Sewers is the Dimir one.
Okay.
It's a land. It has the type Island Swamp, so it has both of the basic land types. And then it has it enters the battlefield tapped, and when it enters the battlefield, you surveil one. And there's 10 of these. There's one for each color pair. And surveil one is that you get a look at the top card of your library, you can put it into your graveyard or put it back. These are awesome and one of the best dual lands, right?
100%. These are okay. So I like that you talked about the design space that it opens up of like there are still good dual lands to be printed, because it did, to me at least, feel like when in Dominaria United, for example, they printed fetchable dual lands, and they were fetchable dual lands that just literally entered tapped, right?
Yep.
And they're not good. Like those
are all less than. I mean, like those are like 10-cent cards, right? Like nobody's playing them. They're not
right. Where the Surveil lands, like, and prices and everything, but these are like $10 to $30 cards currently. And the utility of being able to search for one of these at the fetch land at someone's end step, surveil to fix your next draw, and then it comes in untapped.
And to potentially put something into your graveyard.
Is so good. Yeah, it's like if you have a vampiric tutor, but you need it in Tomb, and you have a fetch land, you just vamp tutor and then surveil it away, right? So, I mean, I think they're really cool, and I do like that the perspective you're bringing to this is not only are they sick, and I want to play them, I think they're cool. It's that this is hopefully like a next step in having other very powerful lands that you want to play in commander decks. And I don't think that means that it's making decks. I think an argument could be made that it's making decks like smaller, because like, well, these are auto includes in those decks or whatever.
Sure.
But I think it's cool.
I'm okay with that
like,
for a mana base.
100%.
Because it just keeps me from playing bad versions of this.
Yes.
And in a mana base, that's what I want. I'm okay if the mana base is like partially solved. I already wanted to play Shock Fetch Bond in every 2-color deck, right?
Right.
And then after that, it dropped off pretty quickly. There's still good ones. We talked about them in our tier list videos, so you can go watch those. But this, to me, is like the fourth one, right? It's like Shock Fetch Bond Surveil,
100%.
Is that how you would rank them too?
Yeah, I think Painlands fall in there somewhere for me as well.
Yeah,
but like, if I'm thinking of A tier lands, I know we put together a tier list, and I know there were other ones in the tier list. Realistically, for me, the S tier ones are those three you mentioned: Shock Fetch Bond, and then like Alpha Duel or whatever, which we've talked about wanting to play more, because like, why not play a good mana base? And we proxy in our play group. But I think in terms of like A or A plus tier lands, it really is like the Pain lands and the Surveil lands that are the only ones in there for me. In addition to potentially like which I don't play, the filter lands that that are any color filters, or like the Fiery Islet type lands, which isn't even a complete cycle, right? What were those ones called? The Horizon. The Horizon lands, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The Horizon Canopy was the first one, right? In the in Celestia, which is why I can never remember it, because who plays Celestia? But I do think they're sick, and I think there's room for Wizards to print more lands that are solidly A tier lands, just a step below for Commander: Bond lands, Fetch lands, Shock lands.
Yeah. Now we just need them to reprint these ones, because these are too expensive.
100%. I completed my cycle of them, except for
Did you get all of them?
Except for Meticulous Archive, which I think is going down now. So I'm hoping to pick that one up.
I've got the few in the colors that I play the most, but I am looking forward to picking these up once they get reprinted.
Yeah, I think that's probably a safe. It was the safest time to buy them was like immediately after they got printed, when everyone was like, "What are these?" And they were like $5. And now it's probably a good time to wait.
The next one I think might be a little controversial, because I think a lot of people consider this card a design mistake, and that's Trouble in Pairs. And I think my perspective is that it is actually good for the format, and I want to talk about why. So Trouble in Pairs is 2 white for an enchantment at rare, and this came in the Boros precon from Murders at Karlov Manor.
Yeah, the blame game precon.
Blame game. Yeah,
Yes.
that was what it was called. If an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. So I think the real problem with the format is just all the extra turn spells that are running around. That's what makes this card so good.
I think so. Yep. And that's all it says.
Yeah, that's the end of the enchantment. 4 mana, no extra turns.
That's a sick card.
No. Nobody cares about that line of text. Whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, draws their second card each turn, or casts their second spell each turn, you draw a card. So upwards of 3 activations for the active opponent's turn.
Yeah.
Plus 2 more for each of your other opponents.
Yeah,
So
like
potentially
in a single turn.
7 activations per opponent's turn and an additional 6 on your turn. No, an additional...
Yeah, 6. 6
on your
because
turn.
each opponent could potentially draw 2 cards.
So
and cast
27
2 spells.
total. Potentially 27
potentially.
activations per turn cycle. Realistically, at least 3.
At least 3, which is insanely good.
Yeah. So 4 mana, it's drawing you like 3 to 5 cards per turn cycle. This is busted. Like, this is just like one of the best white advantage engines in the game. Does this see CEDH play? I'm guessing it doesn't. It seems too expensive.
I think it. So I think it had. I don't know if it's seeing play in any current decks, but I don't see why it wouldn't. Just because, like, it feels to me similar to a Heuristic Study, right? Not exactly the same, obviously, because it's only drawing you on one opponent's turn 3 cards, but it does deal with, like, extra turns are not nothing in CDH, especially in like a Grixis pile that's trying to like go fast. Like Final Fortune is disgusting in these red piles that like just want to win on their next turn. I don't know that it sees a lot of play there. I don't have one yet, which is the most disappointing part to me of this card. Even though it's a freaking awesome card, I need to get one of these.
It's interesting to me that you compare it to Heuristic Study, because I recently listened to an episode of Commander Clash where they were discussing how Heuristic Study, people play around Heuristic Study. You pay the 1, right? Mm-hmm. Technically, people could play around Trouble in Pairs.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to do. And it's so much more ambiguous than just paying 1 mana that people don't. I think people play around this card far less than people play around Heuristic Study, which in some ways makes it better.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because that's the reason I wanted to make that comparison, is because I've found that more and more as we're in like a Heuristic Study meta currently in CDH is what people are kind of calling it, right? The mid-range hell is what people are talking to it like. And I think that Heuristic Study, more and more people are being responsible players, right? And paying the 1 and not feeding people with Heuristic Studies unless they're like comboing off and they think that they're going to be protected on their turn or whatever, right? Or like strategically letting someone draw to help them find interaction or anything like that. Trouble in Pairs, you just like, how are you going to play around this? Not draw more than 1 card on a turn? Like that's...
because a lot of your things you've set up so that you are drawing more than 1 card a turn.
Yeah,
that can't be helped, right?
Yeah, and you're casting potentially more than 1 spell, and that's not always the case, right? But like, because people are wanting to draw cards, at very least, Trouble in Pairs is going to get you 3 cards a turn cycle. I would imagine in a game where people, even in like CDH where people aren't attacking with creatures nearly as much, right? You're going to draw probably 3 cards a turn cycle, and then. You know, if people happen to be attacking or casting more spells, right? Then,
and I've heard that the commander design team feels comfortable with this kind of a card because it's supposed to scale with power level, right? Like at higher power tables, people are doing more of these things than at lower power tables.
Sure.
That being said, I think even at a lower power table, people are going to be double spelling. People are going to be attacking with creatures. Like, that's how games end in lower power tables. People are going to be drawing
more cards. Yeah, this one doesn't quite scale, I don't think, in the same way, because people are attacking more often.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of people that think this card was a design mistake, that like it's too powerful, whatever. Like, people see it very frequently. It was in a pre-con, right? I think that this is a really great thing for the game because, in my opinion, White needed more good engines like this, right? White did not have a Ristic study. Like, Mangara the Diplomat is obviously very good and does something similar to Trouble in Pairs.
Yeah.
This is better. And that being said, I think I think what's important to remember with cards like this is like I am very comfortable with Wizards power creeping cards and printing more and more powerful cards because you need to follow the Peter Parker principle and know that with great power comes great responsibility. And you just have to be mindful of where you're putting this card, right? Like, I love this card. I own this card. I think it's amazing. I do not run it in all of my White decks, right? Because it is too powerful for some of those White decks. But in White decks that are trying to be more powerful, this is a very important card advantage engine that fills a gap in those White decks where like those decks were struggling to get the necessary card advantage to keep up at a higher power. So I think this card's amazing. And I just think that people need to listen to their spidey senses. And when you go to put a card like this in a deck, if you get this like feeling in the back of your mind where you're like, is this too powerful for this deck? Like, listen to that. Don't put the card in, or put the card in, but monitor it very carefully. So it's like, just know that like when there are very powerful cards, you need to be selective about which decks you're putting it in, depending on your meta and depending on the power level that you are building to. We haven't talked about power levels for a while. It was all we talked about for a very long time on the channel. Go listen to those episodes about power levels, and just remind yourself that it's important to build to a specific power level.
100%. Yeah, this to me falls in the similar category to Smothering Tithe, Ristic Study, Esper Sentinel in terms of engines. Like, it's one of the best ones to exist. Now, it's relatively similar to Mangara the Diplomat. I'd play Mangara in a mid power deck, right? But this one just has another card stapled to it, right? It's a Mangara the Diplomat plus Fairy Mastermind, like
and it's an
together.
enchantment,
and it's an enchantment, which is harder for some colors to interact with.
I know that like some people are like, why did they print another Exquisite Blood with Bloodthirsty Conqueror? But for me, I'm like, heck yeah. Now I can run this effect in a deck and not feel horrible about it because it's on a creature, and creatures are easier to remove. So like, it's a powerful effect, and I like that they're putting powerful effects on creatures like Bloodthirsty Conqueror. And in this case, this is a step back. They put an even more powerful effect than we previously had on something that's even harder to interact with, right?
Yeah.
So that just inherently is going to make it a lot more powerful. So yeah, I run Mangara the Diplomat in a lot of my White decks, regardless of power level, because it is a card advantage engine, and it's a lot easier to interact with than something like Trouble in Pairs.
Yeah, it feels to me like, actually, I don't want to like keep beat a dead horse with this one, but it almost feels like it inversely scales with power level, where like at higher, because to your point, like it's a more powerful effect on something that's like quote unquote harder to interact with, which I agree with, especially like mid and low to mid power. In CEDH, this being not on a creature is easier to interact with because you have Swan Song offer you counter. You just counter it. Right, exactly. You have your counter spells that can stop it from even hitting the battlefield.
And at low power, if someone's not in Selesnya, then like, good luck.
Yeah, good luck getting rid of this enchantment once it hits the battlefield, right? And you're maybe not playing counter spells, and if you are, you're not holding them up for a Trouble in Pairs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it does feel, and because it has the creature as attacking stapled to it, like they may not be casting a bunch of spells or drawing a bunch of cards, but they will be casting some spells, and they'll likely be attacking with creatures, right? So you're going to get a lot of value out of this one.
So I love this. I think it filled bottom line is I think it filled a really great gap in White that we needed for higher power decks, just because White was struggling a little bit, in my opinion. And this filled that gap.
We're going to get comments about that. We're going to get comments about White struggling.
I know. People love playing White. I like playing White too, but I was finding it very difficult to find enough good card advantage engines in White.
Yeah.
And this is now it. Just be responsible in which decks you're putting this in. That's all I have to say about it.
100%.
Okay, so my last three here are just pet cards of mine that I think are amazing. So from Modern Horizons 3, we have 6. As made famous by Ren and 6. This is
the solo act from Ren and 6.
Yeah, exactly. Solo album. 2 and a green for a 2/4 legendary creature Treefolk at rare from Modern Horizons 3. Has reach. Whenever 6 attacks, you mill 3 cards. You may put a land card from among them into your hand. And as long as it's your turn, non-land permanent cards in your graveyard have retrace, which means that you can cast permanent cards from your graveyard by discarding a land card in addition to paying their other costs.
Sick.
This card is so cool. So cool. And also some of my favorite artwork from last year. I think that like the portrait showcase art or whatever is so cool.
Yeah, 6 holding a little birdie.
Yeah. So I just think this card feels fun to play. It doesn't feel too powerful. I have not built it as a commander yet, but it feels very fun as a commander. Its name is like 3 letters, which is super cool.
Which is sick.
So there's so many things about this card that I think feel very fun. And 2024 was kind of the year of mono green for me. I fell in love with mono green, and this feels very fun in a mono green deck.
Yeah, I was gonna say, outside of the 2 that you were talking about that are like format changing or the future of Magic defining, you have have a lot of things here that can fit in green decks that I'm excited to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm such a sucker for mono green this year. I love it. It's so fun to play. So yeah, 6 is awesome.
If you haven't checked out, speaking of mono green, if you haven't checked out our gameplay episode, we tried a new format for our gameplay episode last week. It was really fun. It was the December winners who won $25 TCG Play gift cards. We built decks around their deck brews, so check that out.
I played mono green, and it was awesome.
You played mono green. It was sick. Yeah, that apropos of nothing. Yeah. Exactly. So back to 6. I think 6 is awesome. I don't know what else to say except that 6 is so cool. I play him in my Tassier CDH deck. He's so tight. Helps get Tassier Delve.
Totally.
If you have a Lotus Petal, turns all of the lands into your hand into colored mana. It's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, I didn't think about that. That's really cool. Okay, well, the next one is also mono green. It's Springheart and Tuco. It's also from Modern Horizons 3. This is 1 and a green for a 1/1 enchantment creature insect monk. You might be wondering why it is an enchantment creature, and that's because it has Bestow. So it has Bestow for 1 and a green. So you can bestow it on a creature, and it becomes an enchantment aura right on the creature. The enchanted creature gets +1/+1. And whenever it has landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 and a green if Springheart and Tuco is attached to a creature you control. And if you do, you create a token that's a copy of that creature. If you didn't create a token this way, you create a 1/1 green insect creature token. I love copy spells, and now there is a green copy spell. And it makes me so happy because it's repeatable on landfall, which is something that green wants to be doing anyways.
This card is so sick, and I feel like when people first read this card, they were like, oh, whenever a land enters, you create an insect unless it's bestowed, and then you can create a copy instead if you pay the mana. But what it actually is whenever a land enters, you create an insect. If it's attached to a creature, you can pay the mana and you made a copy of the creature. But if you don't, you still make an insect.
Create an insect.
Yeah.
And what's cool is when your creature dies, this sticks around and just starts creating insects. Oh, I think you're muted. I can't hear you.
I apologize. I have been coughing, so I'm trying to keep that from destroying people's eardrums. When a bestow creature is exiled, or when the creature that is bestowed is exiled, does the bestow creature still falls off? It's just that the creature leaves the battlefield anyway. The bestow falls off.
Yeah.
Bestow's sick.
It no longer has a thing to attach to. Yeah.
Bestow's disgusting. I don't play any bestow, but I probably should. Good.
This has to be one of the best bestows, I would guess. I mean, it's amazing. It's so fun to play.
It's really cool. Yeah, I mean, and if you have nothing to bestow, just like 1 and a green, and you just start making 1/1s is super sick.
Every time you play a land,
that's
pretty good.
If you fetch, you create 2 1/1s.
It's really good when you bestow it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sick.
Because it's the same cost, right?
Yeah,
like it's the same cost to bestow it. So
yeah, if you can bestow it, you definitely should. Super sick card.
Wait, do you have to control the creature?
You control. Oh, yeah, you don't have to control the creature to bestow, but it says if it's attached to a creature you control. So you can buff an opponent's creature.
But then you don't get the landfall. You can't make the copies of it.
You can't make the copy, exactly. Okay. That would be wild. That would
that would be so
That would be a Nadu level mistake on this card.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I already think this card's really good. I'm excited
It's quite
about
good.
this one.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's
then
insane.
my last one is from Foundations. Scrawling Crawler is a 3-mana 3/2 artifact creature Phyrexian construct at rare from Foundations. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card, and whenever an opponent draws a card, that player loses 1 life. I love draw punishers because
You play with me.
I play with you. You draw so many cards. I think that like in general in Commander, it's obviously extremely powerful to be drawing extra cards. This helps you draw extra cards, also helps your opponents draw extra cards, but it punishes your opponents for drawing cards. And I think it is somewhat of a mistake to allow people to just draw cards unpunished because it is so powerful. Like it does create such an advantage for the player who's drawing cards. So this is a colorless card
Shield
that can
of
go
the
in any
Apocalypse.
commander deck. It's like a colorless mini Shieldred is kind of how I feel about this card. Except it does the thing that Shieldred wants you to do, which is make people draw more cards.
You know
And
what
it does that too.
What it actually is it's a colorless Nekusar, the Mind Razor, except that everyone draws a card on your turn. Like it's just strictly better, right?
Oh my gosh, it's so good that it's on your upkeep because
Yeah.
that's the problem with a lot of cards, like Howling Mine. It allows you're the last one to get the advantage from
Yeah.
Howling Mine, right?
Yeah.
And this makes sure that you are the first one that gets the advantage from the extra cards being drawn. Like this is, I mean, like the design of this card is just so perfect. I love this card. I think it's so cool, and I'm very excited to play this on a lot of my decks.
Yeah, any deck that's playing Howling Mine or whatever the one is that has people draw 2 cards. I can't remember that one.
I know I'm not going to put this card in all my decks, but I don't know that I could articulate right now where the line is where you shouldn't be playing this card. Because this card is just generically good, right?
I mean, I think it's probably pretty generically good. Like, it's pretty generically good punish for people drawing cards. I think I am hesitant to play cards like this because I try to build my decks such that, I mean, and everyone does this, you do this, but I really like drawing cards, and having the options of cards in hand is like so huge to me. Like that is one of the things, and that's obviously one of those powerful things you can do in the game, but like I really, really dislike the feeling of running out of resources. And so I tend to like pump a lot of card advantage into my decks, and or at least those are my favorite decks to play. And a card like this to me is like evening the playing field a little bit with like I don't get
Because you're
advantage
letting other people draw cards?
exactly. Yeah, for me
Really?
it feels that
Interesting.
way. But I know that's not true necessarily. But I feel like
Yeah.
I'm greedy enough for an advantage that I'm like, no one else gets this. It's just me.
Okay, so I play a Shieldred deck, which plays a lot of Howling Mine style effects.
Sure.
Which is like symmetrically granting a lot of card draw. Is the fact that you get the opportunity to play the card first, coupled with at least draining your opponents for 2 every turn cycle. Is that like enough though? Is that enough of a asymmetrical advantage that like it doesn't feel like you're playing Howling Mine? Like it's not leveling. It is not a level playing field. Like
Yeah, I
you
guess
get the card first and you're draining for sure more than 2 per turn cycle per player, because like we said before when we were talking about what we were talking about earlier, Trouble in Pairs, that like your opponents also are just going to have things on their board that are letting them draw multiple cards a turn.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I guess like at minimum, if this doesn't get removed and everyone's just like drawing a card for their turn cycle, it's 6 total damage on board for a turn cycle.
For 3 mana, and it's getting you an extra card at the start of your next turn.
I mean, that's good. I think it's good.
I like it. The other thing that I really like about cards like this is that it speeds up the game. Like I like things that like accelerate resources, but this does it in an asymmetrical way that makes me feel like it's actually giving me an advantage. Not only is it accelerating the game for everybody by reducing life total and putting more cards in hand, but it's doing it in a way that advantages me in that accelerated state. So I just think this card's sweet.
Yeah, I am on the fence about accelerating games. It depends on the deck that I'm playing, I think I lean towards more like controlling strategies, or like mid-rangey controlling strategies. And so cards like this that do accelerate the game and accelerate my opponents, I tend to shy away from.
When I say accelerate the game, I mean it's lowering people's life totals. They're going to die faster, but it's not lowering my life total.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I guess I'm thinking about it as like seeing it. Am I thinking about playing it or seeing it across the board? I hate playing against these types of cards.
I know you do because you love casting a huge like finale of Revelation.
Sure.
And whatever.
Yeah. Maybe I should be playing it more. I don't give these enough of a shot.
Yeah. This one I would love to hear from people about. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on Scrawling Crawler in the comments. Is this just like a card that belongs in commander decks, or does the deck need to care about artifacts or life loss or card draw or something like that? Like, does it need some extra synergy for it to actually be good? Because like in my opinion, I kind of think there's probably a reason to just run draw punishers. Like I think that's just good. Especially if your opponent has trouble in pairs.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to say that my answer to that question is I think I would only run it if it was synergizing some way with my deck. Even if it was just an artifact deck. Like even if I just cared about artifacts and I wanted to run this as a good artifact in my deck.
I mean, I have an artifact deck and I don't think I'm putting this in it. But I'm wondering if I should. I would like to.
First of all, that artifact deck is Brago though, right? Which doesn't necessarily
care about any of the things that this thing
is. You're drawing enough cards anyways that if anyone else is drawing cards, you're like, whatever. Like, I'll outpace you for sure.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. This is definitely going in Shieldred, though.
Oh, for sure, Shigo. That's definitely where it belongs.
Awesome.
Okay. We spent a lot of time talking about these cards, but I really enjoyed this. This was really fun. The next thing we want to talk about is our favorite set of the year. And I think maybe some of our card selections and the way we were talking about them might be a little bit indicative of this, though I don't know. And I don't know how much we have to say about these, except that they were our favorite sets, and maybe we can elaborate a little bit why. Kelton, do you want to start this time? Do you want to start with what your favorite set was?
Yeah, mine will be pretty short. It was Foundations. Scrawling Crawler came from Foundations. So that was one of my favorite cards from the set.
And that's why. Scrawling Crawler got printed.
No, I think like in general, the number of cards that came out in Foundations, like they weren't the cards that made it into most of my decks. Like I'm not saying that like overall Foundations had the best card pool. I think probably I think maybe the one that you're going to talk about wins that award. But Foundations came at such a great time in the year, right at the end of the year, after we'd had some very different Magic sets. People have referred to the last couple of years as Magic the Hattening, where we're just putting different hats on characters, right? Where Oko is wearing a cowboy hat, and whoever is wearing a detective hat from Murders at Karloff Manor, and Duskmorn, right? People will have Walkmans. So Foundations kind of came at the end of all that, and it just felt so refreshing that it was just like a straight across the plate Magic set with generic Magic flavor. And I loved that. And I think I heard someone say this about Foundations, that if it had come in a different year, it probably would have been very boring. Like, I don't think people would have reacted to Foundations as positively if it had come in a different year. But where it came in 2024, after a variety of sets that had less of a core Magic theme, which I don't think is a bad thing. I'm going to talk about that later in this episode. Sure. But it made Foundations feel very exciting and very refreshing. And so I don't think it was a negative that those other sets were that way. I think it was a positive for Foundations, though. And I cracked a ton of Foundations. I loved Foundations. I loved the Jumpstart set. I thought that there were some really fun cards in there. I was sad that it didn't have Commander decks, but looking back, I'm happy it didn't have Commander decks. That it was just like, hey, just worry about these cards. Like, don't worry about having to buy so much product or like evaluate so much product. Just like, it's a Foundation set. It's gonna be around for 5 years.
Yeah.
I think that was really cool, and I'm excited that it's gonna be around for 5 years. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you on the refreshing front. Like I would never super down on a lot of these sets that didn't feel very magic-y because I feel like they kind of did.
Sure.
And it kind of is a little bit of a palate cleanser before we get into all of this Universes Beyond that is coming this year that I know a lot of people are excited about. But if you are like upset about Magic the Hattening or whatever, Foundations I think was a really good like preparatory set for that, being like, look, listen, like this is still Magic or whatever, you know. I the thing I really liked about Foundations too, I don't have it listed as my favorite set here, but I loved the amount of quality reprints it had and how much is driving down the value of so many singles that were not inaccessibly priced, but like, or prohibitively priced necessarily, but like just were kind of expensive. And now they're like not very expensive at all. Like Authority of the Consoles is like $5.
Oh,
it was down to like $2, but it was like 15 before.
Yeah.
Liliana Dreadhorde General is like $5 right now, and was like,
and
had
they'll
been
probably
reprinted
continue
before
to go
also.
down because it's going to be printed for 5 years, right? There's just so much product available.
Yeah, the hope is that all of these sick cards that people want to play will be available. And I also like that they weren't just like, okay, this is a core set with no new cards. They also printed stuff like Rite of the Dragon Caller, right?
Yeah,
like,
which is so cool. Or Bloodthirsty Conqueror, like we were talking about. Or Scrawling Crawler, which I love.
Yeah, I'm glad that it didn't feel phoned in either. I think it was just like a good,
not at all.
yeah.
All right, you want to tell us about your favorite set?
Yes. You had mentioned this one definitely had the most cards that are pretty played in Commander, I think, these days, or at least have become, I don't know about auto-includes. It's Modern Horizons 3. It just
so many staples came out of it.
So many sick cards that like were almost automatic staples in a lot of decks.
Especially the MDFCs, like the lands. Like Sink into Stupor. Like,
but even
why would a deck not play Sink into Stupor?
Yeah, absolutely. But like stuff like, a Curse Marauder, Chthonian Nightmare, stuff like that. And I don't want to be harping on like the Rakdos Aristocrat stuff. But like in Aristocrats decks, those are just like why would you not play those in your deck now? They're like,
well, it's like better. A Curse Marauder is just, is it the best version of that effect of like the ETB Edict type
I
effect?
think so. It doesn't let you sacrifice a token, but it doesn't let anyone else sacrifice a token either. So it's like, I think it's so good. And it's just, I think part of the reason that I didn't find a lot of cards from Duskmourn and Bloomburrow that I started putting into my decks and like immediately thought like, oh, I need to play this, I think is because they came on the heels of Modern Horizons 3, which was like, oh my gosh, these are busted cards because they're straight to Modern set. They're just going to be stronger, more powerful cards. Yeah. Like Flage or the freaking cat thing. Ocelot Pride. Yeah. Like they're such incredibly powerful cards, and I think it made the other sets feel watered down because they were just standard sets, standard sets. But I think that's why because it came in the middle of all these standard sets and had a lot of cool cards that I really wanted to play. I think
it was a great set for the year. I think it was probably the most popular set for the year, right?
I think so. I mean, always these straight to modern sets like double Masters sets and Modern Horizons, right? They're gonna be powerful. They're gonna be popular. But I think I really like this one. And one of the biggest things I liked about it, like you had mentioned, was the MDFCs. Like, it was really fun to be able to like look at my decks and be like, oh, sick. Now I can play these like Sink into Stupor and Fel the Profane. I mean, I play a ton of Dimir. They are below rate for a lot of things you want to be doing in those spells. But they're MDFCs that can enter untapped, which is so sick. And something that you and I had talked about, like the Bolt lands, like when are we going to get the Bolt lands?
Yeah.
And they were like pretty uncommon, which is so sick. Yeah. And I didn't have like an Agadeem's Awakening or whatever, or the the green or the blue one or Shadow Skull Smashing, because those are also like so prohibitively priced, and these are starting to be so as well. But I thought it was a cool set.
2024 was certainly the year of the mana base. Like we got so many good utility lands, MDFCs, and dual lands out of 2024. It's crazy. Like so much of my mana base has changed now based off of what was printed. Like what card that I was just looking at today is like the Fomori
Vault.
That's crazy. Like, that should go in my Brago artifact deck. It's just like really good card advantage on a land in an artifact deck, right? So it's like just so many good lands were printed this year. Horizon of Progress was printed this year. You know, so lots of good ones in OTJ actually.
Yeah, and well, the Verges too from Duskmourn that are about to be completed in Aether Drift, and
are they going to be completed? I didn't.
They finished the cycle in Aether Drift.
Cool.
Yeah,
smart.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't wait very long. I'm glad
I know.
they just did it in like the next set.
It's so silly to me when they're like, "Here's half of the cycle," and then 10 years
we'll see
roll
in
by.
6 years.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, the next section that we're going to talk about is the favorite deck that we played in 2024, which was really hard.
This was
and
tough.
I don't think you cut it down to one. I'm going to cut it down to one. I'm going to try and like be super picky here and just say, I think of all the decks that I played, my favorite is Grima Saruman's Footman. It's 2 blue-black for a 1/4 legendary creature human advisor that cannot be blocked. This was from the Lord of the Rings Commander set. Whenever Grima deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then that player puts the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of their library in a random order. So I built this as kind of a low-mid power deck. And the reason I think it's really fun is because it kind of has to scrap out a way to win. Because you're primarily casting other people's cards and you're trying to benefit off of casting those cards. Like, you're playing stuff like Dika Fractal Theorist that's like creating, creatures whenever you cast a spell and all of those style of effects. But you kind of have to like figure out how to use the resources that you're flipping off of your opponent's decks to win the game, which I think is really fun. And so it's like when the board's out of control, you're like, okay, which opponent is most likely to have a board wipe in their deck? Which colors are going to have the best board wipes? Which color is going to have the best interaction? I'm going to try and hit the green player if I need lands, like if I'm going to try and ramp, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really fun. So it's like, it's a deck where every game feels like a puzzle that I'm trying to solve. And it's like partially luck, but the deck can still win. It's not like a do nothing deck because it has the powerful, spellslinger effects like Dika.
Yeah, it's far from a do nothing deck because it is basically Dimir Spellslinger with the benefit of Grima. Dimir Spellslinger, but built around Grima specifically as well.
Yeah,
right? Like the benefit of
very
Grima,
much so.
Always being able to get a free spell because it can't be blocked, right? And it won't whiff. Like, it's not they reveal the top card; they just reveal until they hit something. And it might whiff. It might hit like a counter spell or whatever, but like most often doesn't. But you still have like a lot of really good Dimir Spellslinger stuff. I know that you've adjusted it over time. Is your most recent version your favorite one? Because I feel like you would taken out some generically powerful stuff, and then felt like maybe it wasn't doing enough, so you put back in some of the more generically powerful like Spellslinger effects. So
the very first version of the deck, maybe it was the second version, but an early version of this deck was just like theft, right? Because I was like, oh, I'm stealing my opponent's spells. So I was running other stuff like bribery and Tasha and other theft style cards.
Turgrid.
I was running Turgrid in this deck. Oh wow. Okay.
You're running like
the
Turgrid,
very
Ogre's
earliest
Bowmasters and like
the very
Windfall.
earliest version of this deck was not like a lower power deck. This was like is running some pretty spicy stuff. It had Narset and it was a wheels deck actually, the very first version. And then it moved into a theft deck. That was the second version of the deck. And then I was like, I don't like it's not trying to be theft. It is a Spellslinger deck, and that's what it really cares about. And so now I've really honed it down to like it's just the Spellslinger thing.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. And it allows me to play cards that are really unique and fun. Like Misinformation is one of my favorite cards in the deck. It's 1 black mana for an instant. You put up to 3 target cards from an opponent's graveyard on top of his or her library in any order. And so it's like, if I know I'm going to hit them with Grima for combat damage, I can put a spell on top of their library that I can guaranteed cast, right? Or I can use as interaction. You were targeting something to reanimate, and I was able to like snag it out of your graveyard and put it on top of your library with a spell that I was able to cast, right?
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's a cool deck. It does cool things. It feels very puzzly, which is very fun, and it plays cards that I don't normally get to play. So that was my favorite deck that I played this last year. My honorable mention is to mono green. Like all of the mono green decks that I brewed and played. It's been very enjoyable. I didn't know that I was a mono green player.
Yeah. I mean, and you play mono green so well, and I feel like the thing we've discovered from this, or that you discovered that you've talked to me about, is that monocolors are just very good.
Oh my gosh,
right?
they're so powerful. It's so powerful to play a monocolor deck.
Because the synergies are just like so tight within those individual colors that they virtually turn into storm decks. Like regardless of what color you're playing and what you're trying to do, it's just like they just start to storm off because those synergies are, like I said, so tight.
I mean, like red is actual storm. I need to try white. I haven't tried white, but like I've built black, blue, and green all monocolor decks, and like. Yeah, they all have ways to storm off. It's awesome. It's really cool. I need to try white. I know that white can do it too.
Yeah, I think I'll talk about this in my goals later. But I think monocolor decks are cool. I think they're sick. Grima is dope. You have become a mono green player, which I didn't know about you. I knew you were Simic, so it's not a leap. Not a leap to get to mono green.
I'm a big Simic player, but it turns out mono green's really fun.
That's sick. For me, I narrowed it down to 3. And I don't think I'm going to mention all 3 of them. I think I'm just going to talk about my favorite one because I can't do it to my boy. My favorite deck that I played this year was my Garth deck. I actually have 2 Garth decks. I originally had built a Garth One-Eye deck. I guess I should read Garth. Garth is Wooburg mana for a 5/5 legendary creature human wizard. You can tap Garth, and then you choose a card name that hasn't been chosen from among Disenchant, Brain Geyser, Terror, Shivan Dragon, Regrowth, and Black Lotus. You create a copy of the card with the chosen name, and you can cast the copy, but you still have to pay its costs.
But it does get around timing restrictions, right?
It does. It ignores timing restrictions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at instant speed, you can tap Garth, and you get a copy of the spell that you can cast immediately, which is sick. So you can get like an instant speed Shivan Dragon or an instant speed Black Lotus. I had built a version of Garth that I built to be very high power. It was pretty borderline CDH. Garth, I don't think, is like a particularly viable CDH commander, but it was like running a lot of very powerful and CDH adjacent combos in the deck. And I never got to play it. I played it like once every 6 months, and it was bumming me out because it was like you had made a very cool altar for Garth that I was stoked about and I liked playing, and I wanted to play it more. Currently, that is still on my like more powerful Garth deck, and my lower power Garth deck is like fully proxied. I think I want to turn that into my deck that has paper copies in it, because the Garth deck the deck that I've enjoyed playing most this year has been my lower power Garth deck, my chill Garth deck. It's the way that Grima is a puzzle deck, Garth is like a toolbox deck. Like it's a puzzle, except you have just like so many resources.
Yeah.
Because you have Terror, you have Shivan Dragon, you have card draw, you have removal, you have creatures, you have ramp.
And then you have untappers. I think a lot of the deck is around untappers that then let you use those tools multiple times. And it's not even just Garth. There are other cards in your deck that care about being untapped so that you can utilize those things multiple times a turn.
Yeah, the theme, and this may not be tight enough of a theme, but the theme is like, there's several themes in there. Untapping is one of them. 3 color pips is one of them. I play as many 3 color pip spells as I can.
Because of the Black Lotus.
Because I think that's really fun. I originally had Kiki Jiki in there, which I took out because any of the untappers, it just combos with infinitely, and so I didn't feel like I wanted to be able to do that. Though that is one of the three black pip ones I thought about playing. And the other one is just like I think Garth has this air of just like this wizard or mage that has like traveled around the multiverse of Magic the Gathering, and like is like this old sage that's like learned all the most powerful stuff to be doing, right? And so I play a lot of big mana spells and a lot of just good effects from other colors. So like
that's fun.
So there's trying to be like some like wizards in there. It's like a kind of a hodgepodge of themes all around the untapping and blinking
but it works very well together. For having that many themes, it works very well together.
I think it's really fun. It's one of my favorite, like I said, it's my favorite deck I've played this year. It's the one whenever I sit down, I have to convince myself to not play Garth because
Nice.
I enjoy the deck so much. I think it still has a way to go in terms of like being tuned, but
Yeah.
but I think it's
The art is so cool.
it's so cool.
The stained
He's
glass
so
behind
cool.
it is amazing.
Oh my gosh, I think Garth One Eye is one of my favorite cards of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's so sick. So that was for me my favorite deck that I played all year. If I were to give an honorable mention, I guess I said I wasn't going to mention them, but I got to give honorable mentions to Tasigur. I love Tasigur. I built a chill Tasigur deck that I really loved, and Tana and Tevish was one
That's
that
a cool deck.
That was one that I also really enjoyed, but. Neither of them currently hold a candle to Garth in terms of how much I've enjoyed playing the deck. So
Fun. I love that. That's awesome. Do you want to tell us about the next section? The next section is our favorite deck that we played against this last year.
Yeah.
What was the deck that you most enjoyed playing against last year?
This one was so difficult because we play against a lot of our friends' decks, and I really like all of them, and I think they're all really interesting.
So many good ones.
And there's so many good ones. I have one written here, and in retrospect, as I've been thinking about it a little bit more, I think maybe one of my favorite decks that I played against this year that I thought just like I kept being surprised by how cool it was Glarb. I think a CDH Glarb deck. I think Glarb is just so cool, and I think the stuff you can do in Glarb is super sick. But in terms of like casual commander, the things that we've been playing. Now, this one, I'm going to preface this and say that I'm aware that this will seem somewhat self-congratulatory, and that's not what I intend for this to be. I think the favorite deck that I played against this year was an Othari deck that my friend played that I brewed for him. I built it for him. He doesn't play commander a lot, and he only had a precon, and he wanted to come play with us, or I begged him to come play with us, and he came along, and I built him an Othari deck. But I think what I was so stoked on about the Othari deck is that I just don't play a lot of like Boros or Selesnya or decks. I play so much black, and I play very little white, and very little two-color white. And so it was really fun for me to see what Boros does, and specifically what Othari does. And I thought it was, and it really made me think how cool it would be to build a cool Boros deck.
Yeah, I think it surprised you a lot.
It did. It super did. Yeah, I didn't. I didn't interact with it as much as I probably should have. Partially because I wanted to have a good time, right? And I knew Othari was scary, but I also didn't want to just be like, "Thanks for coming to play. Screw you. Othari's going to get removed a billion times." But the thing is everyone else did, and he still was able to get out enough enablers that he could just like cast Othari and swing with like a Perforos and an Anointed Procession. So he dealt like 56 total damage from one single Othari attack.
Wow. That's cool. Yeah, that's really fun.
I think it's sick. I also love that Othari's like a lightning helix on a creature. Like it's a 3/3 with flying and haste, right? That just and it has recursion. It's recursion in Boros. It's so cool. I thought it was sick.
It's a cool card. I think Othari's sweet.
I
would
think
love.
sick.
Also, Othari is a very cool character. The fact that it's like a legendary phoenix is really cool. I wish there was like. Maybe there's more of the lore that I don't know.
Are there no other legendary phoenixes?
There's gotta be.
Breach. I'm looking it up. Legendary Phoenix. Phonix. Oh, Cyrix, Carrier of Flame, is the only other. Cyrix, I guess is probably how you'd say it.
Crazy.
Yep.
Okay, well.
Interesting.
There you
Anyway,
go.
that was my favorite one. Tell me about yours. I want to hear about favorite deck you played against this year.
Yeah, obviously got to play a lot of decks, and there are a lot of decks that stood out to me. But a very fun and special experience was playing against a Guillaume deck by IGB on our Discord.
Yeah.
And so first off, very cool deck. I had never played against Guillaume before. Guillaume's very cool. One really cool thing that IGB did was he's built it as a modular deck. So like he can swap out different themes for Guillaume. So like I don't know what portion of the deck, like half the deck or whatever. But he has different packages for that he can just swap in.
Yeah.
We played against like the higher power version, like kind of like the true Guillaume deck, I guess.
Yeah. And we were like, we can hang. These decks are like no slouches.
Yeah,
we could.
Well, and we
could
did.
not.
It was like a
we
very
did a little
even
bit.
game.
Yeah, it was close.
It wasn't like a power level outlier or anything like that. But what made this game so special was like we just started our Discord in December. If you haven't joined our Discord, you should jump over there. It's really fun community. That was the first opportunity that I had to play with one of our listeners and with a member of our Discord that's outside of our local play group. So that was just a really neat experience for me, and we had so much fun. And IGB's so awesome. He's so fun to play with. He's such a great member of the Discord. He's always helping other people. So huge shout out to him. That was just like really fun. That was a highlight for sure for the year for me.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Was that first game. That was really fun.
People had already kind of been playing. We just had never had a chance for us to be able to get in, jump into a game. Yeah.
So if you're looking for games, like there's always people on our Discord looking for games. Head over there and check it out.
And we will jump in occasionally. Everybody's busy. We're all busy or whatever. But we do try to jump in. We try to jump in when we have time. Our time to play Magic is relatively limited because we are producing Magic content.
A lot of Magic content. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we will jump in. So hopefully we'll see you guys there and we can play a game with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Wrapped up. The year's wrapped up. 2024 is over. It's been over. And now it's officially over for the Commander Pod. Our fiscal year is wrapped up.
Ended.
We're getting our tax documents. We're ready to move into the next year. What are we looking forward to? Our sad tax documents. What are we looking forward to in 2025 in the world of Magic?
Let me start
with the
here.
understanding of a set's going to release like a couple days after this episode, and one set has already released this year. So, but for the rest of 2025.
Sure, for fiscal year 2.
Yes.
I have one word on mine, and I know not everyone feels this way. I know that, like, I don't know if I'm in a minority or majority or whatever. It's Marvel. Like, I am a big Marvel fan. It's something that, like, I really bonded with my dad over. Really, I've loved watching all the Marvel movies. I'm not as much into the comic books. I know that that's probably, like, a lot of what the Marvel sets are going to lean on, rather than the cinematic universe. Like, I guess I'm just like a bandwagon Marvel fan.
Sure.
But I love it. I think it's so much fun. I've already loved the Marvel products that they've put out so far. The Secret Lair was really cool. I had to try and get my hands on like the Doctor Strange counterspell from the convention. Marvel's been a mess so far. Like the Secret Lair was horrible, the way it was executed. But the cards are awesome, and I'm so excited to see those characters on the cards. I'm so excited to play with those characters. I'm so excited to like draft Spider-Man 1,000 times.
Sure, yeah.
I think it's going to be so much fun for me because I love Magic. I've been playing Magic for like a decade, and I understand the Magic universe and ecosystem and all those things, but like I also love other things, and like it doesn't matter to me that much that Magic isn't just on Dominaria, right? Yeah. Like I'm okay with Universes Beyond. It's been very fun for me. Like I like how people have referred to it as like a game system. Like Magic has become more of a game system that facilitates like other settings, or like people have called it, it's Super Smash Bros. Now, where you get out, your Final Fantasy character with your Marvel character with Teferi, and it's kind of like greatest hits. Yeah, and I think that's fine. Like I enjoy that part of Magic. The other thing that's gotten me really excited about Marvel is I'm kind of at a point where over the last decade I've collected a lot of the Magic cards that I've wanted.
Yeah,
and so anymore I don't just need to buy a lot of staples, but it's becoming more fun for me to collect cards.
Yes.
Collect cards I think are cool, collect cards that I think are collectible. And Marvel is like a thing that I want to collect. We had a friend in our playgroup collect the entire Lord of the Rings set. And that was really cool to watch. It was something that I was like, oh, maybe I'll do that. And then as soon as they started doing that, I was like, I don't need to do it anymore because they're doing it. So Marvel is going to be that for me, I think. Like I have every Marvel card with the exception of Abundant Group because I think it was a mistake and I think it's coming in a future Secret Lair. But I have them all so far, and I'm excited to continue collecting them as they print them. I just think it's really cool.
That's so sick. I feel like in terms of collecting, I think that's maybe a direction that both you have gone more so than I have, though I am starting to trend that direction a little bit.
I
as
think we'll
we've
see that
kind
in
of,
your goals in the next section.
yeah, right. As we have started to acquire more staples, I think that's like a pretty natural growth in your. As I was gonna keep talking, and then I thought of a as opposed to unnatural growth joke, and then we show unnatural growth here next to me. Anyway, pretty natural growth in your Magic experience, right? Is that you kind of, and though some people may start as collectors, but as a gamer, for me, it was starting at playing the game and starting to collect more powerful cards to be able to play the game at more powerful tables. And now to be able to, now that especially that we're in a proxy world, it was, okay, well, I'm going to get staples so I can proxy them, play, and I don't really care anymore. I'm just going to get cool cards that I think are cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm excited for that this year. I think that'll be really fun.
That's very cool. Marvel will be really sick. I do think, I don't know that you're in the minority or the majority, but it is, I think
it's divisive.
Certainly paralyzed. Yes, divisive. I was going to say polarizing. I almost said paralyzing. Let's just switch the L and the R line. Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I am not unexcited about Marvel. I think Marvel will be cool. I'm not unexcited about Universes Beyond. I think Universes Beyond is cool. I liked Lord of the Rings a lot. Adventures of the Forgotten Realms was really cool, though that is very like Magic Universe adjacent in terms of like theming. I think I'm in terms of sets, Edge of Eternity seems very cool. I think like a space or like the Blind Eternities like set will be kind of sick. I'm excited to see how they explore that space. And it's just see how that.
Do you think we get our Star Wars secret lair then? Do you think that's when we get a Star Wars secret lair?
Wow. Yeah, I mean they have the contracts with Disney clearly for Marvel. Because is it with Disney for MCU stuff, or does Disney have like all Marvel rights, or they have to make it with?
I think it's Cinematic Universe that they have, right? Like Marvel is still a different entity.
I would imagine
is
so.
It
so maybe
for comic
I don't know.
books. I feel like it is for comic book. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know who has the rights. I know that Universal has rights for Marvel, but I'm not sure how that all of that legalese stuff gets broken up so much. Those entities and like the rights, it's crazy. People nickel and diming all over the place. I think the thing that I am mostly excited for in 2025 is kind of what we were just talking about, is looking for cool secret layers and cool printings of cards. Because I'm starting to try to collect more cool versions of cards and foils and stuff like that. Again, acquiring staples, I was like, whatever, give me the cheapest version of this card that's not dumb looking, and I'll get it because I'm going to proxy it anyways. And I think where that changed for me is when I started to actually put sleeving up my cards into my CDH deck and was playing CDH online a lot and seeing people with these like cool foil cards, or like their cards are like signed and like there's, and it was like, wow, that looks so sick. That's so tight. And showing off kind of the cool cards they have to each other. And I love all my cards, but I'm getting to a point where I'm like, oh, this would be sick if I had this Force of Will in foil, And maybe I should have shelled out an extra like $2 at the time to get a foil Force of Will or whatever. And at the time I was like, whatever, I'm saving $1 so that I can, this dollar can go card towards, exactly. Yeah. And at this point I'm not so buying,
hungry to be buying other cards.
Yeah, I'm not buying cards in the same volume, where I'm mostly proxying decks these days, though I may want to move away from that. We'll see, and start playing. I want to build my Garth deck in paper, and so that'll take me a little while because it was like $2 to proxy. But because it's only $2 to proxy, all of the whatever amount of money I would be spending to get the actual cards in that Garth deck, or whatever amount of decks I'd be taking apart to do that, I can put that money towards like a cool printing of a card. Like Sacrifice, I bought for like $1 back in the day for my Tasigur deck, which is a key piece in Tasigur, and I spent like $12 on the new Special Guest Sacrifice, a foil Special Guest Sacrifice from Duskmourn, because it's freaking sick. It's so tight.
That's cool. That's one thing that as I'm collecting and as I'm storing my collection, like I have different binders for different things and whatever. That's been hard for me to like want to break up collections to put the cards in my deck, so I end up proxying them anyways, because it's like, no, it goes in a specific slot in my binder next to the other cards that are part of that set. Yeah. And I don't want to like have a gap in my binder because it's in a deck.
Yeah, I will say what I was going to say is I think that's partially where we differ, because I think it's kind of fun for them to like live in a deck, and then I can buy another copy of it or proxy if I want it in multiple decks. But then I can be
Sure.
like, this is my cool deck that has all these cool printings, especially for
And
my
I-
CDH deck.
I think like if I were to like travel to play Magic more, you know, like you and I have both been to like one convention. If I were like going to conventions and stuff, I would probably take those cards and put them in the deck, like to go and play with the deck and make it really cool. And then when I get home, I'd probably take them back out,
Put it back in your
just
sure.
put the proxies back in the decks.
I mean, I will say it felt. I've been putting together a lands binder. You had inspired me to do that to like separate my staples and my lands, and I had been completing all of the different colors to have like shock, fetch, bond, surveil, which were kind of the big four
Whatever,
for those
yeah.
colors, right? And to just go through for my Tassier deck and be like, pull out the fetch, pull out the fetch, pull out the fetch, pull out the fetch, of 9 of them. And now to flip through that binder, I'm like, oh, it's not a complete
They're all
set, even
empty,
though I have them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do understand that, and so maybe I'll buy another copy. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm getting to the point where I'm also, I think, past like I only need 1 copy of each staple, which I think is like I still am there. Though
I'm not
as
there
I
yet. I'm not there yet. But I do have multiple printings of cards where I'm like, oh, I really like these 3 Swords to Plowshares
Yes.
printings. So I want all of them. 'Cause
Yeah,
I'm gonna put them in
right.
different decks.
Yeah, well,
right?
just today, as of recording this, we both just bought a sick printing of Path to Exile that we were excited about because we saw that people were selling it. So
Yeah, pretty cool.
anyway, yeah, I think that's kind of a direction we're both trending. You kind of started that down that direction a little bit before I did, buying some like reserved list cards and expanding your collection. But I think I'm also moving that direction, and maybe less so towards like truly collecting, but towards like blinging out some of my favorite decks, even on like getting some like
and that's
fancier
cool.
printings that I want.
That's kind of the culture of CEDH. Is also like blinging out your deck.
Yeah, a little bit, which I think is cool.
Not necessary. Nobody should feel the need to do that.
100%.
It's just like a bonus thing that you can do that is fun.
100%. In fact, here, this is. I needed to print some proxies, some high quality proxies for the tournament that I'm going to, and when I did that, I printed out this. Where's my camera? This is a Rograk and Silas deck that is entirely proxies. There are no real cards in this deck,
Yeah.
so don't.
And you're gonna play that deck.
And I'm gonna play this deck at some point. And this is a Elsha of the Infinite deck that is entirely
100%
proxies.
Yeah.
So like, don't feel pressure to do that. But because I feel like I've kind of gone all in on like I want to like play CDH and I'm playing Tassiger and I want to, have this as be one of my decks that I kind of started, putting funds towards that. So
Love it. That's awesome. Well, let's wrap this up with our goals for 2025. I put down 3 of them. The first one is to maintain fewer decks. For a while, I went like broad. I went the shotgun approach where I was creating so many decks and I couldn't keep up with them. I couldn't maintain them. So they would like get out of date and then I wouldn't want to play them anymore because I'd just be brewing a new deck.
yeah.
And so I've started the journey this week. I took apart 4 commander decks this week and I know the other decks that I have, and I know there are some that I just want to like swap out a few cards. There's some that I want to rebuild. There's some that I just want to like upgrade a little bit. So I want to have fewer decks that I maintain more frequently and that I play more often. And I think that will bring me some joy in 2025. So I'm looking forward to that.
What do you think is your number? Like, what is a number of decks you'd like to maintain?
I don't have a number. What I did is I just made a spreadsheet of all my decks. And then I like went through and kind of like gut checked like which category I thought they fell into, if it was like disassemble or upgrade or maintain or whatever. And I just like did that really briefly. And I think I'll know, like the first step was to just get rid of the 4 that were on the list that I'm just going to like disassemble.
Yeah.
And then as I go through and start working on the other ones, I think it'll be pretty clear which ones I prioritize working on. And then if there's ones that like by the time I get to them, I kind of like lose steam on them. I'm like, well, obviously these ones weren't important enough to me that I want to keep maintaining them. Anyway, so I can continue to like kind of cull the pool of decks. So I don't have a number. It's just like whichever ones continue to maintain my interest over time. There's some decks that I like to keep that I don't play very often, but I like to play sometimes. And maybe it's because they feel linear. Maybe it's because they're at a higher power level than we play in our pod. Like, it could be any number of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when I think about, like, I had mentioned my Tana and Tevish deck earlier. That's one I built in the last 6 months. And I think there are certainly cards that have been printed in the last 6 months that might be better fits in Tana and Tevish. However, for me, I feel like I have found the formula for my Tana and Tevesh deck that I want it to be. And I think the cuts would be pretty tight in terms of like which cards, because it is a pretty smooth ship currently.
Yeah.
And so that is one for me that like I was doing a little gut check as we were talking of like, well, which of my decks do I think I could take apart? And I've thought about taking it apart. We did a Lord of the Rings draft the other day, and I did Temur Scry. And I thought, how sick would it be to do Tana plus a blue partner and do Temur Elves?
Oh, cool.
That could be kind of sick. But I don't know if I want to take that deck apart. But I think, honestly, if I could piggyback off of this, I think that might be one of my goals as well. I think I might join you in that endeavor, because it becomes overwhelming and you just shelf decks, and that's not fun.
Yeah. Yeah, some of those decks I have just not played that I took apart. I haven't played in years
at
this point.
And I think I think there's like value in brewing a lot. Like we brewed a lot this year. Starting the channel, it caused us to brew a ton and build a ton of decks. I think I built probably 7 to 10 new decks this year. And I only play a couple of those. And I think part of that experimentation, part of our journey in Commander thus far, having started out, that's like a microcosm of what our journey of Commander has been, which is I built all these decks, and there were several of them that I was like, oh, I don't like how this plays, and I just don't think it's like what I want to be doing, and so that one I'm not going to play anymore. And then you can whittle down, and so anyways, I think that's a worthy goal, and I support you in that, and I'd like to also probably do that.
Join me. I do have to say that's like balanced out by the number of precons that I buy.
Sure.
I love collecting precons. I think precons are such a fun way to experience Commander. And so it's like I will have fewer homebrew decks, but I have an expansive library of precon decks that I am super happy to break out anytime. So it's like that's where I'm giving myself a pass, where I'm like, I don't really care how many precons I have. Like, I'm not going to like try and restrict my number of precons.
Yeah,
it's just the homebrew decks that like I'm not playing enough. So
yeah, well, if you're not upgrading your precons either, it doesn't take mental energy to like.
That's it.
That's it.
Right? It's like the headspace, right? It's the homebrew decks take up so much brain space because every time a new set comes out, I'm like, well, okay, 18 decks to upgrade, and check to see if there's any cards I need to upgrade, and that's just ridiculous. Like I can't keep doing that. And with precons, like I take them out of the box, I put them in sleeves, I put them in a deck box, and I set them in my shelf for all of my precons. And then when people want to play precons, I bring them out, and that's it. Cool. And I don't have to worry about them at all, and it's very nice.
Yeah, I like that.
My other two goals. Number one is to play more limited. I love limited. It's kind of what got me into Magic in the first place. And I haven't been playing a lot of limited over the last few years, and I would like to play more of it, especially as I've gotten more into cube. I love cubing.
You have two cubes now?
I have 2 cubes. I'm working on a third. I have a friend that has a cube who's looking to start a league, and so I want to join that league. So yeah, like I just think cubing is really fun. I think drafting in general is very, very fun, and I want to get better at it. I'm not very good at it. I think I'm very mediocre at it. But if I put in the reps, I think I could get better at it. I
think you're quite good at it. I think. Do you think it's like a competitive outlet for you also, where like?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
because casual Commander is so fun, but it's not.
Casual Commander is very fun. I like high power stuff in Commander. In casual Commander, I think CDH is interesting too. I'm going to start playing more with you with this Glarb deck. But I think like the majority, like 80% of my Commander play is very casual, like, and lower power. Like I enjoy playing precons with people. I enjoy playing like low to mid power, and like I think that makes up like 80% of my Commander play, because like really Commander is a fun way for me to spend time with my friends. Like that's what I really love about it. And like limited is where I really like to grind and be competitive and feel like I'm trying to make the most optimal plays every time. So yeah, I mean, it is a good competitive outlet for me.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that.
And then my last one is to just invite more people to play Commander. I know a lot of people that I think would enjoy Commander, and they're not playing Commander, or that are playing Magic but aren't playing Magic with me. And so I want to invite more people. I think we invited quite a few people to play with us this last year, and it ended up resulting in a really cool pod, a really cool play group that we love playing with, where we get upwards of like a dozen people to just
Yeah.
like come and like jam and play Commander, and that's awesome. And I think we could grow that. Like, there's just more people that I think could play, and Magic's more popular than ever. It's more accessible than ever. Nobody needs to buy decks to come and play because we have way too many of them, and
Yeah.
people can always proxy. They don't need to buy cards. So should be like a low barrier to entry. It's a really good opportunity to meet new people, to spend time with friends. So yeah, I'm definitely wanting to try and invite more people to play with us this next year.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I think I'm really happy with the amount we did this year, and I think it'd be fun to continue to expand that. We've even talked about, I don't know if anyone listening is local, but we've also talked about at a very cursory level, trying to reach out to like a game store and see if they would be willing to like
Like once a
allow us
month.
to reserve a night that like it's the Commander Pod, like Commander night, and
Live.
or live, sure. Set up a table and we play or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, and so I think that'd be cool. I think that's cool. I like that a lot. For me, in my goals of 2025, I don't want to poach too many of yours, but I do like the maintaining fewer decks. I will be honest with you, like even that amount of precons that you have, I know the headspace of maintaining decks is a lot smaller. I don't want to circle back on this too much, but one of the things I thought about as well is like, for me, the fatigue of choosing a deck to play is also like a real thing. And
Yeah.
so if I can get my choice fatigue down a little bit and say, I have these couple decks I want to play, which one do I feel like playing right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think
Yeah,
that could be
that's a good
something
point.
that's worthwhile, because I have to choose which ones I'm going to put in my little box to bring. I have to choose when I play when I'm there. You know, I think there's lots of benefits to that. So kudos, kudos, but keep brewing. Sorry, wow, I
Yeah.
just choked for a second. Okay,
I will keep brewing. There's so
Yes.
much still that I want to brew.
yeah, dude, that's the hard part. Is like you can
Yeah.
whittle it down, but then it just grows again. So
Every
kind of
new
like
set.
like a bush. You got to trim the tree a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. One of my goals is to play in CDH tournaments this year. My goal from last year was to get into CDH. At the beginning of the year, I started playing CDH, took a long break as we were doing the podcast really heavily, and we've since a little bit found a groove, but also I just like missed playing CDH and wanted to play again. So
Yeah,
I started
you
playing
just
online again
Made more time for it.
towards fall. Yeah, exactly. Made more time for playing CDH.
I think you took a break from some of your league grinding and like reoriented that towards CDH too.
Yeah. There's different. There are seasons. Okay, this is some a view into my life. Every year, around September, October, League of Legends World starts, and it pulls me in. I watch these pros play League, and I'm like, that's so sick. I got to play some League again. And then in the springtime, it's the Rainbow Six Invitational, and I watch the pros play, and it pulls me in. So for those seasons of the year, I get sucked into those games. And I try not to be as much. But yeah, towards I was like, hey, I want to get into CDH again, so I started playing again. And for Christmas, I asked my wife if I could go to a tournament. So this past weekend, now as this episode airs, I will have gone to Snowy Summit and probably gotten my butt thrashed by everyone there.
That is about it next week.
I know, yeah. We'll see how it actually goes. But that will be one tournament this year. So I'm sufficiently into CDH, I would say now. And the rest of this year, I'd like to attend more tournaments. We have some locally here. I actually met someone last night who plays CDH a lot, and they mentioned that there are frequently tournaments in our local area that I could try to attend. So looking forward to potentially doing that. And then my other goal is related to CDH, is to build another CDH deck potentially. Hashaton right now just got spoiled, and
Looks
people are
really
like
cool.
stoked about that one. And I love zombies, and I love Reanimator, and so that feels like right up my alley.
Yeah.
Though part of me also doesn't want to like jump on the bandwagon of that one a little bit, you know. But I do think it'd be fun, and I think it'd be fun to try to figure out. But I think it'd be fun to just like, I've worked really hard on Tassiger, and I want to keep maintaining it. I think it'd be fun to like have a secondary deck that I also like am actively playing and understand enough to be able to like make cuts and play more and stuff like that. I have two other goals. One is a little bigger. One is a little smaller, I guess, depending on how you look at it. I want to build a cycle of 5 monocolor starter decks starter commander decks.
Commander decks, cool.
For new players.
Cool.
Because I've had people that I want to get into Magic, and I never feel like I can bring them in. And even precons these days are so hard to just like throw someone on.
So complicated.
So difficult. And so what I would prefer to do, what I want to do is build 5 really simple, very linear, probably typal 5-color decks that only play the most basic like synergies within those types so that people can get into Magic and learn the rules, learn the game system of Magic, and then find the things that they think are cool. And so when they come into play and say, hey, which of these looks coolest? This is goblins, this is merfolk, this is artifacts or whatever. Those are both probably potential blue archetypes, I guess. But like, and I think that would be an easier way to get people into it. So that's something I want to do that I've been pushing
That's
off.
cool. I'm excited for that one because I'll probably end up playing those decks when we invite new people into our play
exactly.
group, and I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be a fun way to get people into Magic and into Commander that is a little more friendly to newer players.
Totally.
That doesn't involve so many complex mechanics. And the last one, which I think is the simpler one of the two logistically, is to buy a reserve list card.
There's lots of cool ones out there.
There's
and
lots
they're
of
not all
really cool
expensive.
ones, and they're not all prohibitively expensive. Yeah, exactly. Depending on what you consider prohibitively. I guess you could buy. There's some that you can buy for like $1. I want to buy one that I think is cool. For a little bit, it was Yawgmoth's Will. My local store had a Yawgmoth's Will. And over the time it took for them to get my store credit in, it shot up like $30 because they use Card Kingdom pricing. Card Kingdom never approach us for sponsors because your pricing model is... No, I'm just kidding.
Get out of here.
No,
you're so funny.
But
you can get Phantasmal Sphere for 36 cents.
There you go. Get Phantasmal Sphere. Maybe I'll buy Phantasmal Sphere. I think the one I'm looking at now is potentially Lion's Eye Diamond. I think it'd be cool to have a Lion's Eye Diamond.
That's a big one.
That's a pretty big one.
Okay.
But I don't know. That is pretty big. But I also want, if
we're
I
gonna
get
have to
one,
make
I
a
want
lot
one,
more content if you're gonna afford a Lion's
Right.
Eye Diamond.
Right. The thing about Lion's Eye Diamond, I was thinking about it, and if it's, I want one that I would be able to run in multiple decks. And so if I got a Lion's Eye Diamond, if I built like a Rogside deck, I could play it in a Rogside. I could also play it in. It's currently in my Tassiger brew, and so
that's
stuff
really
like
cool.
that. So
very cool.
Those are my goals for the year.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And thanks everybody for listening. Make sure to check out our previous content. Like Spencer mentioned earlier, we do have a gameplay episode from last week that was really fun. We tried a new narrated format, so let us know if that was enjoyable to listen to. Come join us in the Discord. Remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any content. And until next time, remember to always pay the one.